on your chairs. If you don't have one, you can use tear a piece of paper from anywhere, from the booklet. What we want is everybody to write 2-3 objectives that they would like to have the political manifesto have. So these 2-3 objectives will be collected by Prakhar, and he's from the Youth Alliance. Maybe write your name and the region that you're from, and what they're going to do with your opinion is that they're going to collect all the information, create an ideal political manifesto that they will give to every political party in India. So, if you have paper, pen, pencil, jot down 2-3 objectives that you want changed or added in your region. So, if you have a piece of paper, we'll give you one. If you don't have one, and we'll collect it in 2 minutes. So, and now call Professor Madhukar Shukla.
Good morning, everyone, and we come to the last session, which I think is very given that the currency of transaction is money, although I should talk about different other complementary currencies, but still, at least the currency is transaction is money. One of the very basic issue, although last 3 years there has been a lot of work that has been done on financial inclusion. But still, there are many channels which are not explored. There are also a large number of people who, for various reasons, do not have access to that, to the finance. And that's why we think if we're talking about strengthening the grassroots, then this currency should also be. And for which there are, at least what we were able to identify, 3-4 with very innovative initiatives which have come up within last maybe 2 years to 4 years, 5 years. And this session is about that. But before I talk about the session, I wanted to make a couple of announcements. One is all these sessions are being live webcasted and also being uploaded on YouTube. So on YouTube there is a channel called XLRI Brand. So if you go there, if you have missed any part or if you want to see any part, those are unedited videos as they were taken. You will find all of them over there. We are also video recording it separately, thanks to me, which over a period of time will give us some time, but we will also edit and speaker by speaker we will upload them. Some people had inquired about the PowerPoints and videos which were shown here, so we will be uploading them there, and there would be a common link from our weblog. I don't know if you are not aware of about the weblog. If you are aware, you will go there. So within the coming week, that link will be up over there, from where you can access all the presentations and whatever videos we were able to collect over here. So we'll be uploading them. Some of those videos perhaps are already there on the YouTube channel, so we'll leave the links to them. So, and the third point was that since the purpose of this conference is not just to have speakers and participants and listen, but also to create some kind of connections and partnerships, and it's essentially the beginning of a conversation rather than the end of the conversation. There are many people you would have met here who you would like to connect to and you would like to work with them. So we will be sharing the contact details, the mail IDs, and if we have the cell numbers with everybody on an Excel sheet. If you don't want that, please tell us. I mean, if you don't want your details, or if you don't want to receive the details, just please tell us. Otherwise, by default, we'll do that. So that's the default mode of the conference. Okay, so now we come to this session. As I said, we have a tight time schedule. We are already that's 10 minutes past, at least by my watch. So we are at 11:30, and we'll try to close it by 1:45 this session, and then we'll have a small sort of stock taking session among ourselves, and then we break for lunch. So that will be the agenda. So let me invite our key speakers, Abhishek Sinha, who is the CEO and co-founder of Eko Financial Services. So Ranshu had talked about the power of mobile phone, and what Eko has done is to develop a technology which is based on mobile phone, and which on which you can open an account, you can transfer funds, and so we would like to hear from him about what. And I mean, just to give an idea of the impact that currently, I think this was 2009 when you started.
Yes.
2009. So in 5 years now, they are every day there are more than almost around 1,80,000 users who do more than 6,000-7,000 transactions to the tune of some 3-4 crores, but all on mobile. So thank you very much for coming joining us. We have Shashi Bharat with AID India, Organization for India Development. We have a partnership with the AID India locally for our rural immersion program for the students, but it was only during the last summer when I was in Bhopal and they had won the, along with Ramki also, won the World Bank Development Marketplace Award, when we found that there is a lot of innovative work that they have also started, innovative models, which they have started to reach financial access to remote villages in Jharkhand. So thank you very much, Shashi, for coming. And Ramakrishna NK, the founder of Ramdev.org, which is again a web-based, and I'm again going in a way to see if you relate it to what was discussed in the last session by the three speakers, talking about the power of ICT. So we have here at least 2 examples of using that power of ICT to reach financial access to people who actually require it. So thank you very much. I've been called moderator, super moderator, captain, I don't know, many other things during these last 3 days. So I think I've now drawn that role. What I would request you is to take about 15 to 20 minutes to make up with, whatever you want to share with the audience. And that will give us till about 15-20 minutes for question answer. I think those question answers are very, very critical for people. Sorry. Okay, I was forgetting that. May I request Neha to kindly give the bouquets to Abhishek Sinha, to Mr. Shashi Bharat, and to Ramakrishna. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Okay, so we'll go by alphabetical order, the same order, or okay, so Abhishek.
Thanks a lot for having me here, sir. When I told my mother that I'm headed to XLRI, her only comment was that you're 14 years late. So, I'm very humbled to be here. And I just want to give a disclaimer, I'm not a social entrepreneur, my company is not a social enterprise. But the services we provide do in fact largely cater to people who are low income, moderate income customers. And I've had this opportunity to go and speak with a lot of them in the last 5-6 years of doing this, which has been very gratifying and humbling in many ways, because at least we, being a technology company, never realized that we would impact lives in so many different ways. So really the problem which my company tries to solve is that in our country we have a deficit of financial infrastructure, whether it is to transport money from one place to the other, to keep money safely somewhere. We don't have enough branches, we don't have enough digital money or adoption of digital money. And that's the problem statement we wanted to solve. And which that one out? Okay. So we said that, and we were seeing a few things happening across the globe. I don't know how many of you know about M-Pesa, which is a branchless, which is a payment or a branchless banking service run by Safaricom in Kenya and a few others around the globe. About 10, 12 years back, there were some initiatives in the Philippines. And so we said that we were truly inspired by the cell phone. So I'm a graduate of IIT Mesra, and after that I worked for Satyam Computers for 2 years, and then I started my first company, which is a telecom software company. And this is my second company, which is a mobile payment company. And the whole idea was that we were exposed to a regulation by Reserve Bank of India, which is the Business Correspondent Regulation. It came in 2006. It says that a third party can source and service customers on behalf of a bank beyond the branches. And so, looking at the stories around the globe, we were very inspired by the shopkeeper. And what further inspired us is that when I was starting the company, my son was just a year old. And so visits to the pharmacy were fairly regular. And I discovered that I would never pay the pharmacy when I was buying, because most of the time it was ordering on the phone. And I would only settle my bills once in a week or once in 15 days. So there was a lot of trust between the customer and the retailer with respect to cash. And I also discovered that, rather rediscovered that I would take a lot of opinion on whatever I was buying from the shopkeeper. So the shopkeeper was also a big influence in my decision making. And we said that we must leverage this and use the shopkeeper as a point where customers can avail of financial services at the counter itself. And so this is one of our counters. This is how it kind of looks. We are now present in quite a few cities. Our largest network though is in Delhi NCR. So you can see the posters. This is like a telecom shop. We have grocers, pharmacies, cyber cafes, photocopy shops in our network. The other thing was cell phone, and the beauty of cell phone is that technology does not discriminate. We are a technology company, so when we got into this space, we were not introduced to terms like financial inclusion, corporate social responsibility. We were all there because we saw a huge opportunity, and very selfishly we wanted to look at that opportunity, create a big company, create a lot of value, and hopefully some wealth for each one of us. But cell phone penetration was hugely encouraging for us. Someone mentioned in his deck as well, and my discovery has been that most of the economically active individuals, even in rural areas, and we work in Bihar in quite a few places. Most of the economically independent, and when I say economically independent, it's not mostly the revenue generator in person. So there are a lot of people who will go from Bihar to Delhi to work. So the economically independent person is a female in the house, because she's the the largest recipient of the money transfer, and she's the one who's then spending it back at home. And they were all having cell phones. So we were very inspired to use the cell phone. But what we realized that the design constraints in creating something on the cell phone was that literacy levels, diversity of languages, types of devices, types of mobile, multiplicity of mobile network operators made the problem statement complex. And coming from a software background, we said, oh, let's do an app. Very soon, we realized that even the basic app as SMS, the navigation to the SMS app is not common across all cell phones. And what we realized is that the most common denominator behavior was dialing. People are not using the address book, people are rarely using SMSs, and it was largely for dialing of numbers and receiving of calls. So this is really the one thing which we all know. It is the most common denominator behavior across all cell phone users globally, which is dialing of numbers. And so we said that even though a lot of smartphones have come, this 3x4 keypad is actually the only interface which is common across cell phones of multiple models and types. So, we were given this design constraint, and this is what we came out with. Doing financial transactions on the phone by just dialing of numbers. So if you carefully look at this slide, what you see is a check. Check is a fairly universal payment device. It can be used, I can use it to pay you, I can use it to pay my rent, I can use it to pay my EMI, to pay my insurance premium. So check is fairly universal in its interface, and we said that we must take some inspiration from this. And the only transaction which banking teaches us is to debit ourselves. Nobody gives. We can only take out money from the bank and give it to somebody else. We can't pull money from anybody's bank. So we created this interface. So star 543 is like the URL or the shortcode which redirects the information to us, followed by the mobile number of the recipient, which is like the alias to the account number, just as you write a name on the checkbook, which is alias to the beneficiary's account number. We have the mobile number, which is a lot easier to remember. Most of you will remember your mobile numbers, but will never remember the credit card number or the bank account number. Then the amount, which is again digits, and then a 4-digit one-time password, which is one more innovation which we did. So we probably came out with the simplest user interface, and just to substantiate this a bit, we have transacted over 6,000 crore rupees on just this interface. And we created probably the world's cheapest two-factor authentication. So what you see is a booklet. It's a paper booklet which helps the customers derive that 4-digit one-time password. This is the second version of it. So this booklet, when it folds, the form factor is that of a debit card or a credit card, so it fits in the same slot in the wallet. And then it's like a lookup table. So as a one-time process, when you open a bank account at one of these outlets, you get a kit where you also get this booklet. You open the booklet, you have to register the booklet with your cell number. And so there are no pin mailers. We don't send out pins because that's very expensive. You choose your pin. So let's say the pin is 1368. Then it's a lookup table. So 1 for the digit against 1, 3 for the digit against 3, 6 for the digit against 6, and similarly, so we get the one-time password as 1620. So it's just dialing of numbers. Missed call is a big phenomenon in a country. This is like missed calls. You dial it, the transaction gets done. There are absolutely no downloads, no apps, absolutely nothing. So it will work absolutely on any phone and every phone. Just dial the string and your transaction gets through. It's like a missed call. So the delimiter, which is the star, helps the customer make sure that the information is correct. It's not an idea that they are in a hurry to dial. They can check, recheck, be completely satisfied. And there are some more additional security features enabled, such that customers don't make mistakes. So this is really how the transaction looks like. You do this transaction, you transact. So all of you would have seen *123# or *121# or *111# to check your prepaid balance. You dial this and you get your bank balance. So these are really the two transactions which we teach the customers, to debit their account and to check their balance. One of my learning has been that people keep money under the mattress, not because they don't have access, but it is the control of the money. And to give the sense of control of the money, initially we promoted the balance check syntax quite a lot, and that actually worked for us in helping customers build that trust, because they could now check their balance 24/7 completely free of cost. So this is really the vision which Eko is trying to chase. We believe that we could change the payment or the financial services infrastructure if everybody who has a cell phone, is either an ATM or a merchant. So if all of us become like ATMs or merchants, so we have the ability to accept electronic money, we have the ability to convert that electronic money into cash, because fungibility is extremely important. The reason why most of us in this room have adopted electronic money, because the fungibility between electronic and cash is very conveniently available to us thanks to the ATM which we have access to. So why does this work? This works because it works on a formal channel. We work in partnership with banks. It is a formal channel. It works because the transaction cost is very less. It is we don't have to pay any salaries to any of these retailers, just like they get paid commission for selling soap, shampoo. So here also they get paid commission for opening bank accounts and doing transactions. It took us time to understand how this business inherently runs. It is really just as for FMCG companies, the supply chain of those merchandise. For us, it's the supply chain of cash, and it is the rotation of cash. And actually, cash rotates much faster than FMCG products. So we had to build a supply chain which would take care of the high velocity, and it needs to be tight because after all, it is cash. And the beauty of the transaction, the simplicity of the transaction helped us a lot in the customers adopting it. But we spoke about non-issues yesterday, and here are some learnings. So in my company, we started using the term financial literacy because that's what the banks introduced us to, only to realize that financial literacy is a wrong term to use. Because when it comes to people like you and me, we are never given financial literacy. All the banks who come to us do marketing, do their product marketing. And there is a mechanism for us to go back to our financial service providers if that promise is not met. So we have abandoned the term financial literacy in our organization. And we just call it simple product marketing. We actually do product marketing, and I'll give you examples of what we did in financial literacy and what we did in product marketing. This is financial literacy. We no longer do this. This is product marketing, and this is what we do now. So it's really, really important to talk to the customers in their own language, and we're really trying to come back to this fundamental, and there was a huge learning in what the speakers spoke yesterday about being sensitive to their self-respect and dignity. The other thing is beneficiary or customer. Again, you will never hear from anybody in Eko that we deal with poor customers. It's low income and moderate income poor people. We deal with low income and moderate income customers. It is customers, we provide service to the customers. And we have had our own set of missteps, early missteps in this before we corrected ourselves and realized where we were going absolutely fundamentally wrong. A non-issue in our business, but we had a lot of impact, at least more than the customers, at least in our outlook, and today how we design our products, how we communicate those products, that has been a marked change. And one amazing example is this. There is no, in both the products, there is no compromise in technology, there is no compromise in the quality of songs available or content available. It's just that the scale is different. A lot of people come from this background. I don't come from a very social background, so for me it was a discovery that customers whom we cater to, the only fundamental difference is that of scale. If I open or some of us will open a bank account, the bank will offer us a 5,000 rupee average balance account. But for low income and moderate income customers, we don't have the right products. You have a zero balance account, and then you have probably 1,000 or a 5,000 rupee account. There is no account, there is no bank which today gives an account which has, because you need steps. From 5,000 you need a step to go to 10,000. For low income customers, moderate income customers, they need a zero balance account, and then they need a 20 rupee account, a 50 rupee account, a 75 rupee account. So between 0 and 1,000, there would be probably 20 products which are completely missing in the market today. It's really important to approach the customer just as I would approach a high-income customer. Customer is absolutely king. The day we changed this philosophy in Eko, we have seen significant rise in loyalty. Otherwise, we were becoming too dependent on the intermediary, which is the retailer or the agent. And because of our continuous effort in trying to connect with the customer, we are now making a lot better progress in terms of having loyal customers. So, at least in my business, this is a checklist which we follow. I must have the right. Initially, when we opened bank accounts, these bank accounts were placed on our server, and our server was not connected to the main core banking system of the bank. So these customers, so we were a small island. The customers in the island could transact with each other, but not beyond it. And we have made sure in the last 5 years to correct that. It took us 3 years, close to 3 years, just to get the right infrastructure and connectivity with the banks. So we still have a huge battle as far as our banking partners are concerned. The right product and pricing. Today, what happens is that, let's say you have a 5,000 rupee account and I have a 50,000 balance account. A lot more freebies are extended to me than you. Per transaction cost for me is significantly less than what you would get from the bank. For these customers, unfortunately, it's completely the reverse. The more transactions they do, because it's a per transaction model, they end up paying more. So the more business they give to the bank, they end up paying more, which is extremely counterintuitive. Initially, the approach was completely corporate social responsibility. So we were like the cost partners and continue to be, to a great extent, cost partners rather than revenue partners for the bank. So the unit economics initially for us did not work. In Eko, in the very first 4 years, we ran out of money 4 times. So hopefully we have 9 lives and we have 5 more to go. Awareness. How many of you really know about business correspondence? How many of you transact at business correspondence? Today it's a very model which is pretty infested with discrimination. It's only for the poor people and not for you and me. And we are making a big push to change that, saying that this is yet another alternate channel of the bank. Just as you have a branch, you have an orbit of ATMs around the branch. Now you have an orbit of human ATMs around the branch, which is increasing the reach of the banks. And it's an interoperable alternate channel, so it's not meant for just a particular type of customer, but for everyone. Timely payments. At one point in time, we had 5 crore rupees of receivables from State Bank of India. It just brought us to a halt. And finally, you know, while in the 90s we would have got rid of the license Raj, our operational dependency on the banks kind of works like a license Raj for us. So every time we want to open an agent, we have to go back to the bank and seek their permission. It's very interesting how this sector is evolving. You know, we have mobile payment guidelines, and I just want to build the point around specific regulations, sector-specific regulations to principle-based regulations. So 5 years ago, Reserve Bank of India came out with mobile banking guidelines. What would they do today? Will they come out with tablet banking and tablet banking? Because when they become specific in their regulations, then practitioners like us will always find loopholes and make sure that the regulations work to our advantage. Because there is always a gap between a mobile phone and a tablet, and we will make creative interpretations there. So at least in our advocacy effort, we try and push for more principle-based regulations to happen in the country. You know, government talks about subsidizing bank accounts while there is no subsidy for mobile phones. One of my other discoveries was that, and I have traveled to quite a few villages in Bihar and UP, I have never come across, and I mean this, I have not come across a single cell phone which did not have ringback tunes. So all of these customers were willing to pay anywhere between 50 paisa to a rupee every day for that piece of entertainment for their callers, not even for themselves. Well, there is a big debate. We kind of work in a competing environment with mobile network operators. They fear that they will be reduced to being a dumb pipe, and I think they're really losing out on being a Facebook, where they could have nurtured many more organizations and partners to fuel mobile money. Today, the biggies like the Airtel, Idea, Tata, Vodafone think that Eko is their competition and really behave in a very unfair manner when giving us access to the bearers which we need. And finally, you know, there is a need to decouple payments from value. In our country, there's a huge opportunity to fill this gap, but we still don't have companies like PayPal and Square in India. So there are some silver linings. There is, you know, very recently you would have come across a Nachiket More committee report. And they have introduced 2 concepts of payment bank and white label business correspondents. I think if it gets implemented, then we will be on a path to decoupling payments and banking. And well, this is quite an old picture for us. We hosted Bill Gates in our office way back in 2008. Helped him open a dummy bank account at one of our outlets, and he really liked the service. One thing which inspires us and continues to remain with us is that he said that you may have designed something which is being used by low-income customers, but if it indeed is a more efficient infrastructure, then you will slowly start to see that others also start to use this infrastructure for their transactions. This is a picture of Tahrir Square. All of us in Eko, so we ran out of money 4 times, but my core team continues to be with me. And truly one thing which binds us is that we also feel that this is a revolution. I mean, it's now sounding like a social entrepreneur, but I continue with my disclaimer that I'm not a social entrepreneur. Well, we have all taken this plunge, as entrepreneurs, as team members, we have completely jumped off the cliff without truly understanding, what resources does it take to build such a distribution and a retail marketing company. But we've done that. Though we have one big, huge desire to win disproportionately. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Abhishek. We'll take the questions at the end for all the three speakers. So may I now request Shashi to.
So what was I'm thankful to XLRI for inviting me to share some of our experience on ICT activities. And also thankful to Mr. Professor Madhukar sir to give me a chance to spend some of the time in my Sasra because it's the month of Jamshedpur. So I can spend some of the time in evening. Actually, I got up from the Dhanbad and I started my career in 2002 in AID as a finance monitor. And when I started taking this, one of the project is Common Service Center in 2007. After that, I turned my mindset and jumped into the some different sectors and started to look after the Common Service Center in Palamuru. This is our organization, Alternative for India Development. It's a national level NGO working with the 7,200 self-help groups and 17 districts and around 20 projects in all over India. Our approach is, I'm looking at the Common Service Sector project in Balamujo. So our approach is the community-led CSC centers. The committee and the joint ownership by the local youth. This is like one ICT platform for empowering the rural communities and providing several services as per demand of the community. And we are delivering so many services to each panchayat. This is our one concept: access to banking services to marginalized and rural CSC. Come panchayat process banking services. I think that most of you know about the Common Service Sector. It's a Patya Kendra in Jharkhand. In each panchayat, the government of Jharkhand is implementing one Patya Kendra. This is our working area. We are working Palamu, Garhwa and Lathyar. We are having 600 panchayat, 3,000 villages and 3 million populations. Might have everybody knows, आप लोग सुनते होंगे गढ़वा पलामू लातेहार के बारे में. जब न्यूज़ में कभी भी आता है तो मतलब न्यूज़ में आने का मतलब है कहीं ना कहीं कुछ गलत ही घटना हुई होगी. अच्छे कामों के लिए ये दिन किला नहीं जाना जाता है. ये एक तरह से ड्रॉपडाउन एरिया है जहाँ हमेशा सूखा पड़ता है. एक तरह से नक्सल राइट इफेक्टेड एरिया है जहाँ हर समय नक्सल लोग कहीं बोलबाला रहता है. ये हमारे पंचायत बैंक कॉन्सेप्ट है जो हर पंचायत में एक कियोस्क है जो कि पंचायत हेडक्वार्टर में सिचुएटेड है जहाँ इस तरीके के सेवरल सर्विसेज हम लोग वहाँ डिलीवर करते हैं. इस मनरेगा के जितने बेनिफिशरीज हैं उनका अकाउंट पेमेंट, सोशल सिक्योरिटी स्कीम्स, इंदिरा आवास योजना, सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप्स, नेशनल पेंशन स्कीम्स, इंश्योरेंस सर्विसेज, आधार सर्विसेज. टू 2010 में हम लोग स्टेट बैंक ऑफ इंडिया से एग्रीमेंट साइन करा बिजनेस कॉरस्पॉन्डेंट के लिए. क्योंकि हम लोग पंचायत में पहले से भी ई गवर्नेंस सर्विसेज प्रोवाइड कर रहे हैं. जैसे ई नागरिक सेवा है जिसके माध्यम से हम लोग 5 तरीके के प्रमाण पत्र इशू करते हैं, जन्म, आयु, मृत्यु. तो इसके साथ साथ हम बैंकिंग सर्विसेज भी देते हैं. और चूंकि गवर्नमेंट ऑफ झारखंड ने सीएससी पर बैंकिंग सर्विसेज को ऑथराइज किया तो जितने भी उनके बेनिफिशरीज हैं उस पंचायत के उनका पेमेंट से अकाउंट जो भी ट्रांजेक्शन है हमारे सेक्टर से होता है. और इस तरीके की सर्विसेज है बैंक अकाउंट ओपन करना, उनका ट्रांजेक्शन करना, माइक्रो क्रेडिट सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप्स को प्रोवाइड कराना. पिछले 1 साल में करीब हम लोग 117 के आसपास हमारे सीओस बैंक पंचायत बैंक है जो पलामू, गढ़वा, लातेहार जिले में काम कर रही है. इसके साथ करीब हम लोगों ने पिछले एक साल में करीब 2.25 लाख अकाउंट अभी तक हम लोगों ने ओपन किया। इतने सारे स्कीम बेनिफिशरीज हैं, नरेगा के पेंशन के, स्कॉलरशिप, इंदिरा आवास योजना, अदर्स में जो है सिर्फ पलामू गढ़ वाला क्या वहाँ के मैक्सिमम पॉपुलेशन से वो माइग्रेट कर जाते हैं दूसरे स्टेट्स में मेट्रोस में काम करने के लिए। तो एक अच्छा सर्विसेज है। जैसे जो लोग बाहर हैं, तो पहले क्या होता था, वो जब भी गाँव विजिट करते हैं तो पैसे साथ में लेकर आते थे। अभी क्या होता है कि फंड ट्रांसफर करते हैं अपने, और जो पेमेंट होता है परिवार के लोग हमारे सेंटर से गाँव में ले लेते हैं। ये ट्रांजेक्शन है एक साल का। जब हमने प्रोजेक्ट स्टार्ट किया पंचायत बैंकिंग का, तो मेरी डीसी लातेहार से बात हुई कि हम लोग कहाँ से स्टार्ट करेंगे। तो मैं मनिका ब्लॉक है लातेहार जिले में, जिनका हम लोग चयन के साथ मनिका के बारे में जब गूगल में सर्च करेंगे उसमें बहुत सारा न्यूज आएगा कि 3-4 मर्डर हो चुकी थी, बहुत सारे किडनैपिंग हुई है सिर्फ मनरेगा को लेकर। 2010 में डीसी के ऊपर कंप्लेन आया था, उनकी नौकरी जाने वाली थी। मनरेगा के इतनी सारी घटना हुई तो गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया ने उनको बैन लगाया कि मनरेगा कोई फंड उनके पास नहीं आ रहा था। तो हमने मनिका को चुना, मनिका से स्टार्ट किया। और पीछे अगले 4 महीनों में हमने वहां करीब 80% जो अकाउंट है सारा का अपने सेंटर से ओपन करा, पेमेंट वहां से उन्होंने स्टार्ट किया। और उसके बाद से अभी तक आप मनिका में कभी ऐसी कोई पैसों को लेकर, पेमेंट्स को लेकर आपसे कोई इस तरीके की घटना नहीं हुई। ये कुछ जब हमने कैंप स्टार्ट किया, कुछ लोगों से इंटरव्यू लिया हमने। कुछ लेडीज थी जो 2011 से काम कर रही थी, लेकिन उनके अपने अकाउंट के बारे में उनको आज तक मालूम नहीं था कि उनका किस बैंक में अकाउंट है, किस पोस्ट ऑफिस में अकाउंट है। और उनका पेमेंट तो वो दलाल लोग पैसा रखते थे, उनका पेमेंट आपको उसमें पूरा नहीं मिल पाता। अगर 800 पेमेंट आया, 200 उनके हाथ में देते, बाकी पैसे वो दलाल अपने पास रख लेते थे। इसके बाद हम लोग जब काम स्टार्ट, हमारा सिस्टम प्योर बैंकिंग ऑनलाइन एक बायोमेट्रिक सिस्टम है, जहां आप अगर अकाउंट ओपन करते हैं तो आपको सब इन्फॉर्मेशन से ऑथराइज कराना होता है। जब आप पेमेंट देने जाने होते हैं तो आपको फिर हम इन्फॉर्मेशन देना पड़ता है। मारू देवी के नलपुर राम है जो नरेगा में काम करते थे, इनके यहाँ से पोस्ट ऑफिस 20 किलोमीटर दूर है इनके गांव से, और उनको कभी पेमेंट्स के लिए डेली 20 किलोमीटर जाना, 20 किलोमीटर आना, और उनके गांव से एक ही गाड़ी चलती थी। तो मतलब कुल मिलाकर 100 रुपये का खर्चा था एक दिन। अगर वो बैंक जाते हैं और पोस्ट ऑफिस जाता है, पोस्ट ऑफिस में उन्हीं की तय नहीं था कि उनको उसी पेमेंट मिल जाएगा। तो ये एक तरीके का उनके लिए असुविधा था। और इनके पंचायत में जब से हमने स्टार्ट किया तो सारा पेमेंट इनको पंचायत स्तर से मिला था। उनको फिर ट्रैवल नहीं करना होता है, किसी मेडिकल के पास नहीं जाना होता है, फिर दलाल के पास नहीं जाना होता है। और सबसे बड़ी हमें ये उसकी खासियत क्या है कि इसका टाइमिंग जो है, पहले हम लोग स्टार्ट करा था सुबह 10 बजे से 5 बजे। इनका टाइम क्या होगी, जैसे बहुत सारे गांव वाले हैं जो सुबह के समय में खेत में काम करते हैं, तो सुबह का 7 बजे से हम स्टार्ट करते हैं, 10 बजे से हम सारा पेमेंट बैंकिंग करते हैं। इसके बाद हम लोगों ने 2013 जून में स्टार्ट किया आधार सर्विसेज। टोटल 52 पंचायत में है जहां बैंकिंग के साथ साथ आधार पे भी काम चल रही है। इसके साथ हम लोगों ने करीब एक जीवन मुद्रा पॉलिसी दी है, LIC माइक्रो इंश्योरेंस की, करीब 5142 हम लोगों ने माइक्रो इंश्योरेंस किया। इसके बाद जस्ट हम लोग NPS लॉन्च करने जा रहे हैं अपने पूरे पंचायत में। कुछ स्टडीज हैं जो हमारे वेलीज होते हैं, जो वीडियोस रन करते हैं, उसको विलेज लेवल इंटरनेट हो जाता है। ये वेलीज है, 2009 में ये परामू के रहने वाले थे और ये डिप्लोमा करके कहीं काम कर सकते हैं। एक फर्स्ट सेशन में जो हमारी टॉपिक थी डिजिटल एम्पावरमेंट, हमारे कम्युनिटी प्रोग्राम चलता है चला हुआ है, उसके माध्यम से उन लोगों ने सुना वो एपिसोड और इन्हें तय किया कि हम अपने बाहर जाकर काम नहीं करेंगे, पढ़ने के लिए चलाएंगे। ठीक है, उसके बाद से जो बैंक अकाउंट थे अभी तक उन्होंने काफी अच्छा मॉडल के रूप में पलामू में काम कर रहा है। ये सुरेंद्र सवाल है, पहले ड्राइवर हुआ करते थे, जोमेटो में ड्राइवरी करते थे। इन्होंने भी तय किया कि हम पलामू में वापस शिफ्ट होंगे, किसी अरेंज करेंगे। आज के दिन में करीब 6000 बैंक अकाउंट इन्होंने ओपन किया। इसके साथ साथ चूंकि जो मेरा कियोस्क मॉडल है उसको सस्टेन करने के लिए सेवरल सर्विसेज ऐड करना होता है। जी गवर्नमेंट ऑफ बिहार का, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया और बहुत सारे प्राइवेट सर्विसेज है जिसको हम लोग अपने कियोस्क से डिलीवर करते हैं। ये नागरिक सेवा है, पहले लोग जाते थे ब्लॉक में या प्रखंड में प्रमाण पत्र के लिए। अब क्या होता है कि वो ऑनलाइन एप्लीकेशन तो हमारे पंचायत में जमा करते हैं और कुछ टाइम फ्रेम के साथ हम लोग वो प्रमाण पत्र उनको वापस उसी पंचायत में मिल जाता है। इस समाधान है, अगर किसी को पुलिस कंप्लेन करना हो तो हमारे प्रयोग से आए वही ऑनलाइन वो पुलिस को कंप्लेन कर सकते हैं और दिन एक हफ्ते के अंदर उनको सारा सर्विसेज और प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करना है। इसके साथ साथ संवाद समाधान, किसी व्यक्ति को अगर कोई कंप्लेन करना है या उनका पेमेंट नहीं मिल रहा है, किसी शिकायत करना है तो इस ऑनलाइन पोर्टल से जाते हैं, इसके लिए उसको 15 रुपए का चार्ज पे करना पड़ता है। कमर्शियल टैक्सेस है कि अगर एक कागज साक्षात्कार, ये पूरे झारखंड में किसी भी जेल में अगर कोई बंदी बंद है, उसके परिवार वाले अगर उनसे बात करना चाहते हैं तो उनको उस जेल में जाने की जरूरत नहीं, हमारे फर्जा केंद्र में आते हैं और एक 15 मिनट का स्लॉट होता है जो वो वीडियो कॉन्फ्रेंस के तहत उनसे बात करते हैं जहाँ होते किसी भी जेल में। फिर अगर किसी को रजिस्ट्रेशन कराना एम्प्लॉयमेंट एक्सचेंज में तो हमारे साइट से वहां ये राशन कार्ड के बारे में जानना है। इस तरीके के बहुत सारे सर्विसेज हैं जिनके माध्यम से लोगों को सारी जानकारी मिल जाती है और हमारे संचालक लेडीज है उनको एक रेवेन्यू जनरेशन का काम होती है। इलेक्शन में भी जस्ट लॉन्च किया अगर कोई अगर आपको अपना इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कार्ड बनाना पड़ रहा है तो वो इससे सम्मिलित हो सकता है। उसके बाद हम लोग पलामू में देखा कि वहाँ की जो महिलाओं की स्थिति काफी सही नहीं है, उनको घर में आने के लिए या जो शिक्षित ग्रुप होते हैं उनको ब्रांचेस में जाते हैं तो उस तक की फैसिलिटी नहीं मिलती है जो हमें काम मिलता है। इसके साथ अभी हम लोग जस्ट एक नया प्रोजेक्ट लॉन्च किया महिला में, पूरे 10 ब्लॉक है पलामू में जहाँ हम लोग महिला के लिए एक सेंटर खोल रहे हैं। वहाँ पे ऑपरेटर भी उसी गाँव की महिला है और उस ब्लॉक की जितने शिक्षित ग्रुप्स है उनका सारा ट्रांजेक्शन उस सेंटर से चल रहा है। ये हमारा एक इनसाइड फील्ड एक्सपीरियंस है, इंटीग्रेटेड एंड कन्वर्जेंट सर्विसेज, जो हम बहुत सारे सर्विसेज को इंटीग्रेट करके डिलीवर कर रहे हैं। बैंकिंग एक ऑप्शन है, उसके साथ इंश्योरेंस है, गवर्नमेंट है, ई गवर्नेंस सर्विसेज है। दूसरा सोशल एडवाइजर की पोस्ट टू रेवेन्यू जनरेशन, क्योंकि अभी लोगों की जरूरतें हैं उसको जरूरतें को पूरा करते हुए हम लोग रेवेन्यू जनरेट कर रहे हैं। केवल एक मैक्रो प्लान बना के हम लोग एक क्या डिमांड है जिस पंचायत में उस डिमांड के एवज लोग सर्विसेज का सप्लाई करते हैं। इसके साथ फाइनेंशियल लिटरेसी है, जो भी सर्विसेज हम कर रहे हैं पब्लिक प्राइवेट पार्टनरशिप मोड में आईसीटी प्लेटफॉर्म क्रिएट कर रहे हैं कि यहाँ तक जितने भी गवर्नमेंट और प्राइवेट सर्विसेज का डिलीवरी हो। थैंक यू।
थैंक यू वेरी मच। एक इंसाइट ये है कि एक प्लेटफॉर्म है, हम लोग अपने अर्बन लैंग्वेज में कहते हैं वैल्यू एडेड सर्विसेज। तो एक प्लेटफॉर्म है, देयर आर अदर काइंड ऑफ वैल्यू एडेड सर्विसेज व्हिच कैन बी प्रोवाइडेड जिनके साथ ये भी कहते हैं उनकी जरूरतें डिफरेंट है कंपेयर टू आवर्स, लेकिन वो जरूरतें भी उसी प्लेटफॉर्म से पूरी हो सकती हैं। दैट वाज अ ग्रेट इंसाइट, थैंक यू वेरी मच। एंड देन नाउ आई इनवाइट Ramakrishna to talk about Rugby, which is a very unique venture. Keep out.
Thank you, sir, for having me. This is the second time here. I'm quite familiar with the campus. Unlike the last time, I was quite lost. Is it working? Yes. No, I just, given that there's a good part of the audience is, I want to believe that you're all going to become social entrepreneurs at some point, notwithstanding how social is social. But I just want a quick show of hands. How many of you are planning to start something in the next, maybe in a couple of years?
And then we
There has been a change since yesterday.
Okay.
no, the number of years also increased.
Yeah, and also much also raised its hand. Okay, and now I want to really quickly walk you through very briefly, and then I'll run you through a set of slides. And I'm not going to spend too much time on the slides. So it all started when I and my other co-founder her name is Shukla. She's also related to me. She's my wife. Both of us decided to take a plunge, and we planned it. Just the way you sort of plan other things in life. We planned it and we said, okay, let's give ourselves 2 years and then we will start something. And in a country like India, you're spoiled for choice because you can pick up any cause and dedicate your life. So we researched several ideas, and the one idea which really made a lot of sense at that point was 2006 was microcredit, because it had a solution to help people come out of poverty. It made a realistic attempt in helping people come out of poverty. Researched it closely, deeply, and we found that in 2004, in India, in Hyderabad, people who received microcredit were paying interest rates which were 50% plus, 50% APR. Now, this was microfinance, this was not. And that article triggered a series of thoughts, and we felt that something not so right was happening. Then can we lower the cost? So just to give you a sense of how this cost of borrowing is arrived at, there are two components to it. One is the cost of capital, and then you add to that the cost of operations. I'm not sure, I'm hoping that you've heard of Mohammed Yunus, and he has a cookbook for microcredit. If you want to do microcredit, he offers you a recipe, and the cookbook is this. He says that 9 to 12% should be a cost of operations, and we should add to that the cost of capital, and that should be the cost of borrowing. Ironically, in India, that was not happening. And increasingly, the rationale for not doing that was, well, there is high risk. We are offering it to communities who don't have a credit history, therefore there is high risk. At the very same time, if you ask them, what is the repayment rate? How does the repayment rate look like? And they would tell you, well, it's about 99 to 100%. So, it just didn't add up. There was something really not right. What was happening was, most of these initiatives turned themselves as for profit. And then, there was a sort of a mission drift that was happening. Okay, so 2006, when we came up with this idea, we researched it, and I won't go into details, but we got very lucky. We got the support of ICICI Foundation, and we set up Ramdev. The initial capital, came from my savings, but we were very lucky. We got this capital, and we set up Ramdev. Just a week back, we celebrated the 6th anniversary of Ramdev. So we went live on 26th of January 2008, and completed 6 years. So here is, I'll quickly run you through those slides. But before that, okay. Just to give you a quick snapshot on these numbers are a year old, but this is 35% of India's population as a bank account. I'm sure the numbers will look a bit better thanks to Eko. But the alarming fact is the number which comes later. 11.6% have any money in those accounts, and out of which only 7.7% have any access to credit. So these are numbers which tell a really sorry state of affairs, and you can see the gradual sort of regression in some sense because of the fact that if you don't have money in the account, well, you can't be considered creditworthy to begin with. One of the things we're trying to solve really is, again, at Ramdev, we take a lot of care and seek out communities, borrowers who have not been offered credit or have been denied credit. What we've essentially done is, we've built a platform and also built an ecosystem around it. So it's, even though it looks like the platform is innovation, but it's actually the ecosystem which we've sort of built over the years. We work with field partners who are actually the backbone of Ramdev. They are the real heroes who access communities and who provide them credit at a rate which they agree as part of the mandate they sign up with us. So this is a typical, profile of a partner, Jeevan Jyoti Kala Kendra, based in Madhukar. And this is how a search page looks like. This is how a typical borrower profile appears. So one thing, if you notice, we really talk about the interest rate, and we ensure that our partners don't charge more than what is specified here. And we raise this capital from individuals like you and me, but also we are tapping into corporate CSR funds, and channeling that money to fund these loans. So for runway borrowers, what does it mean? It means essentially they get loans which vary from 9% APR to 15.3% APR. Just to give a quick context, RBS guideline on this is 26% plus 1% for processing, works out to 28% APR. And the reason why we feel that we should lower the cost is precisely why these communities are underserved. Very often, the microfinance institutions feel that the lower they go down the pyramid, there is a possibility of default because of their income levels not being able to sustain that loan. And we do just the opposite. We encourage our partners to reach out to them and offer these loans. As a consequence, we have first-time, 50% first-time borrowers, access to credit for underserved needs. I want to put another example. So we work with a partner called SGY in Mysore, Swami Vikalpa Youth Movement, a very reputed organization. We met them many years ago, and they said, "Well, this is great, but we don't know how we can leverage this. So we'll get back to you." And they did get back to us 3 years later, and they were ecstatic. They said, "You know what? You now have access." So they said, "In these 3 years, this is what we have done. We have worked with the street vendors outside the government hospital in Mysore, formed them into self-help groups, and linked them to a bank. We motivated them enough over the last 3 years, and now they have access to bank account. More importantly, they also have savings." Just give an example where, and our program with them ramped up in a few months. And for runway social investors, they give them the ability to choose, and the transparency which comes with it, how is the money being utilized, and so on and so forth. And our partners, they get access to credit, the amount they need and when they need it. So this is, we don't have any constraints as to, they should reach out to 10,000 families. Even if they're reaching out to 100 families, they can create meaningful impact. We're happy to partner. In fact, yesterday I had a very fruitful meeting with Ms. Shukla from Seeds in the campus. So hopefully, we're going to partner with them soon. So this is what we've done: 6 years, 17 states, 40 partnerships. Very high attrition of partnerships, largely because we keep looking at working with partners who can give us access to communities who are underserved. 20 plus in terms of cumulative capital we have raised and disbursed, 20,000 loans, and got less than 0.5% in terms of default. What we've done is basically built if one piece of advice I would like to give to any social entrepreneur is that if you're building a technology platform, it's best to have the technology know-how in-house. This is something which we learned painfully. Also, as an organization, you've moved towards, building frameworks for scale. And one of the things we really looked at is Six Sigma in a very big way. We try to see how we can, because we firmly believe that if you have a process, you have defined a process, and to deliver an output, if the process is not measured, then rest assured, you may not get the desired output. So that's something which we have done. The operations team, quite a few of them are Six Sigma certified. They treat well on Six Sigma. Yeah, so this is something which we've been able to replicate in terms of scalability and sustainability. Yes, I think it's again. So one, very key success story, not too far away from here, actually in Ranchi district, in a place in the Bundu block. Saraswati Devi, she was one of the entrepreneurs. We gave her a loan of 8,000 rupees She topped it up with her own savings of 5,000 rupees, and she set up a village level service center. She was trained on entrepreneurship by her partner Udyogini. And what was amazing was that she became a role model for the rest of the community. She became a mentor, and she went on to win Anita Singh Memorial Award from the governor of Jharkhand. So some of the things we've also been learning as we've done, we do a lot of online campaigns. One of the campaigns which stood out was the Sunday World Cup fever. It was very simple in terms of what it did. We asked people to, this was during the World Cup, so we asked people to bet. We said, if Sachin scores a boundary, I will invest 1,000 rupees on runway. And that went a bit viral, and we raised over ₹1 million in 10 days. And this is how the page looked like. It was actually, can't get simpler than this. It's actually not even connected to a database. Somebody used to actually manually update it and used to tell them, please bear with us as we update this. So every time they used to commit, it used to come up here, and every time they used to give us the money, actually give the money, transfer the money, we used to put a smiley next to the commitment. And that really, this experiment really, showed that there's a huge potential in the model. And there were a lot of human interest stories which came out of this. There were people who wanted to buy a television set for the World Cup final, and they said, no, we're not going to buy that, we're going to put this money into runway. So we did a campaign during Diwali. Every time somebody dedicated it, they chose a state. And we also have these chapters which are very active across several cities and other countries. Also, one of our social investors, a Teach for India fellow, she did a very interesting experiment. She asked them to invest in a borrower as a class, and she taught them finance like never before. And what she did then was completely, extraordinary. She took them on a field trip, and I think what happened in between that time frame between when they went to the field trip, the children were so excited, and they started preparing gifts for the borrowers they would meet. So some of them were vegetable vendors, so they created newspaper bags. So we will give them when we meet them. So a very interesting experience for students and for us as well. We also have brand ambassadors like Vedar Manji, Abhishek Sinha, Ramakrishna more recently, some of the recognition, and we also won the Bihar Innovation Forum Award. And this is what we're looking at scaling up. We're looking at this year. So what we achieved the last 5 years, we're going to achieve in 1 year. So that's going to be, and we're going to double it, looking at 100% year-on-year growth. And that's about it. I've got a short film. See if you can see it.
Thank you very much, Abhishek, Shashi, and Ram. I think we still have time, about 10 minutes, for any questions which people have. We'll take 3 questions, so let's start from Chanana.
Hi, my name is Sagar Chandna. I have a question to Abhishek. How do you meet the KYC for your customers? Because the profile of customers you have, I think they can barely provide you an identity proof or an address proof. And my second question is, what is your transaction cost? And what is the maximum limit your customer can transfer?
So this is a question we get every time, but Eko has very little role to play in deciding what KYC to collect and what pricing to seek from the end customer. Because we work as business correspondents, the pricing is completely decided by the bank. So at this point in time, the way KYC works is that we need at least one ID and address proof of the customer. So before Aadhaar is available everywhere, we still collect a piece of paper. We are now experimenting with eKYC, which is with Aadhaar, where no paper is required. But and these days the most common I card with people is the voter I card. That is fairly prevalent. Rather, we have not come across rural areas or villages where it is not present. It is present in most of the villages. It may not be present with customers in Delhi and Mumbai. So that's one. As far as the cost of transaction is concerned, if you look at our direct cost would be around say 2 to 3 rupees per transaction. As far as the customer is concerned, the customer pricing. So this is cost which we incur on processing the transaction, and I'm talking about say about 2 to 3 rupees of direct expenses which we have. Owing to the unfair pricing of the bearer by the mobile network operators, it is ridiculous that SMS is few paisas, but we have to pay for SMS and USSD fairly large price in excess of a rupee and a half at times. As far as the customer is concerned, bank accounts are largely free today. In urban locations, the bank charges 100 rupees. Deposits are charged at 0.25% with a floor and a ceiling. Withdrawals are double of this. Money transfer is at 2%, again with a floor and a ceiling. And this pricing is from the bank. What we get is, let's say, about 75 to 80% of this comes to Eko, and we would share almost 50 to 60% with our end agents. So that's broadly how the unit economics works.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Vikalpa. My question is also with Abhishek. Actually, I was associated with the launch of Airtel Money. The problem is in the village scenario is the SIM swapping and SIM churning. So how do you look into security of this kind? Like you have the USDD in a particular number and then the mobile number. What in case when the SIM gets churned or SIM swaps? So when anybody get the
Absolutely, and this happens fairly regularly. We would be handling close to 10 calls every day on SIM churn. People absolutely change SIM cards, and what we do is that we run a call center. So we are probably the only business correspondent who runs a call center for 16 hours in a day, and these services are provided to the customer whenever they wish to change their SIM card. The change gets effective immediately. They call up the call center. We have a few questions for verification. Once they do that, they can change their phone number, and there are some additional security features. So they need to again re-register the OK key booklet, which helps them generate that one-time password. So once they re-register successfully, so we know which OK key booklet they have. Once they re-register it correctly, we allow them to do the transaction again.
So what is always the time for this?
So it happens absolutely in real time.
Hi, my name is Pallavi, and firstly I just want to say that I've really been blown away by all the three presentations. I've personally followed all three models, but just hearing you speak in person is just wonderful. My question again is to Mr. Sinha. So you talked about financial literacy versus product marketing, but have you ever thought of including things like financial planning or wage arithmetics that help your customers with other aspects of financial literacy and not just product marketing? Has that ever?
Well, in Eko we haven't done anything like that. I just have, so I know that there are a few organizations which help customers with capacity building, and I completely support those initiatives. But from a service provider perspective, I haven't come across a service provider who caters to high-income individuals and customers and goes about, getting them to sit in a class, raise their hand, get them to take an oath and stuff like that. At least I have never been through it. We initially, and because I had a few colleagues who came from microfinance background, we initially had processes in that direction. And we have done away with all of those simply because I don't think so that I think it goes against the self-respect of that customer.
But it's not a need of the hour.
My personal experience is that I may be financially reckless and careless, but when I speak to these customers, and I have spoken in depth, they are much more savvy, at least than I am. So I can say this, I'm sure Shashi will have a lot more experience because he's absolutely on the ground, day in and day out. This is probably a myth to conclude that those customers are not savvy with their money. Yes, again I'm not saying that this particular job of capacity building Eko is not doing it, but we completely support organizations which are trying to do that.
Any other questions? Okay. The last question.
Hi, this is for Ram and quite a tangential question. Was this presentation done in-house or somebody else did that? Like, it was marvelous, 5 minute clip which kind of gave us the total entire picture and touched our hearts really.
Very quick answer. So there are two parts to it. One is the copy. So the copy was done in-house.
Okay.
But our agency, we work with an agency who volunteered to help us with this.
A question related to his. How did you derive the name Rangde? That is also fascinating.
Okay. Actually, we wanted a name which essentially is something which connects with India, and so the context to this is that IIM Smita at that point were not in India. So this strong desire to come back to India was there, and also we had this deep frustration. We need to do something about India. And so they came from a frustration and the fact that it's not enough if we talk about giving our time. It's not enough if we talk about giving our money. It's time we give ourselves to the country. And so sort of from there it came, and other simple answer is that we're very lucky because we found the domain extension available. This was registered in December 2006. A year later, Rangde Basanti was released.
Okay, thank you very much, Abhishek. Thank you very much, Shashi. Yes, let's give them a big hand. Well, friends, with this we, in a way, not exactly, but in a way, we also come to the end of the conference. We have a small, stock taking kind of a thing, but before that, let me. There has to be a word of thanks. And yesterday there was a phone call. I went out, but I missed that call, and I saw Dr. Tripathi sitting there with some people, and he made a very interesting observation at that time. He was, counseling, mentoring some of 2-3 youngsters over there, and he said, in your life you have strong connections and you have weak connections, and if you are doing something, then strong connections are your family, your near and dear friends and others, and his advice to them was that if you are planning to do something, don't rely on the strong connections. Rely on the weak connections. So I was thinking about this conference, and so many of our friends and I'm very grateful to them because nobody refused. And if they refused, there was a genuine cause because they were either traveling out of country or there was some issue with the family or business and so on and so forth. So first of all, I thought maybe these are my weak connections, which are actually the strong connections. And so first of all, I would like to thank all of our speakers for coming here and sharing the kind of work which they are doing. I'm sure all of us benefited through that, from what you shared, and benefited not only in terms of knowledge. I think there's a lot of inspiring stuff. Everything we did. So thank you very much for that. I would also like to thank. And more so because coming and to Jamshedpur and even leaving Jamshedpur, Joe is now agree with that. His train is 5 hours late. So it's not a very easy task. We don't like people to leave. In our own language in XLRI, we call Jamshedpur as jackpot, which means when you are stuck, you are stuck. So hopefully we see you tomorrow also first. I would also like to thank all the participants and the organizations who sponsored them, and many of them sponsored themselves, for being part of this initiative which we had. For us, yes, there is, as I mentioned in the beginning, we have speakers and we have the participants, but essentially we are all the community. And I hope that this community will keep on engaged with each other. And that's why I mentioned that the mail IDs with whatever we have, we'll collate them in Excel sheet and share with everyone so that you can keep in touch for various things which you are doing, where you can support. That support may also be being a social investor for running. Okay. I think I should also thank these guys. I should really thank them because, I have an advantage. I'm a professor in XLRI. I also have a white beard, which I think is a very unique combination. But actually all the work, background work has been done by them. Jagriti Yatra people went to Poonch, and that evening there was a, they webcasted it, live webcasted Anshu's interaction with the Yatris. This is just I think about 2 days back. And that's when the idea came that we should also do it. I mean, there were a lot of people who were writing to me who said that we attended that time, we can't come. Is there some way we can be part of that? We know what is happening. So I just sent that link to these people, and I think this was on 31st morning that Rishikesh finally cracked the code. So now we had the whole thing live webcasted and stored. And not just them, you had Jojin and you had so many other people, Amit, who also helped out with that. So thank you very much for, and help us next year. Sponsor this conference next year. You guys will be earning a lot of money. That's that. Okay, so we come to the last part. The last part is with all these kind of conferences where we have interaction, we have a lot of ideas. Once we go back to square one. And that's one of the saddest thing which happens because so many things are happening in the last 3 days. There is very less time we have to think about what we gathered out of it. What is our major takeaway? And that's what I thought maybe if we can just break into small groups, just turn your chairs, sit into small groups, 6, 5, 6, 7, 8 people. And spend some time just sharing what you think was your major takeaway from last 3 days. Right? So you just turn your chairs, sit in small groups. That's why we have the plastic chairs so that you can see people moving around.
So if everyone turns around, then no one will be facing each other,
Before we start, just a small announcement. Someone from Youth Alliance just wants to have few words with you.
Many of you must have seen a piece of paper on your chair that is over here. Can I take a few minutes of your attention, please? So, we are doing a Heart Manifesto campaign. Yeah. So, we are doing a Heart Manifesto campaign across country, and what we are trying to do is we are collecting youth voices, compiling them, and presenting to the political parties. General election is quite near. I think it will happen in May. And what we are trying to do, we are trying to put these voices in the political parties' manifesto. So, and the ecosystem just now in the country is that they are really receiving us. So we have been able to present our manifesto in Bihar Assembly, then we have been able to present it with the app, and then we also present to the so there is small piece of paper on your chair. So if you can write down your demand, what you want to happen in your area. Okay, there's a box over there. So then if you can just show the box over there. And just drop the take 5 minutes, whatever voices 1, 2, 3, whatever demand you have, if you can drop them in that box, we collate the entire data and put them up in the political market. So we're trying to lobby around and see if our voices can go over there. To be a great help, you need a piece of paper I have and this is around. Thank you so much.